the day I promised to marry William. He was so excited that he wanted to tell everyone we were together. Later, I became pregnant. He specifically bought a hospital so that I could have a peaceful pregnancy. When I was 6 months pregnant, I went for a prenatal checkup. I accidentally overheard him talking to the doctor. "Mr. Johnson, the baby is growing well now. It's just that the head is a bit large. There might be danger to the mother during delivery." He just smiled coldly upon hearing this. He didn't take it seriously at all. If she dies, she dies. Isn't marrying her just for having children? My smile instantly froze on my face. I felt a chill in my heart. William said angrily, "She caused Emily to fall into the water before, which led to Emily being unable to have children. This is her retribution now. The happy life I always thought I had turned out to be a lie. I secretly went to another hospital. I scheduled an abortion. William, I hope you won't regret any of this." The prenatal checkup report in my hand suddenly fell like it was electrocuted. No wonder I agreed to marry William. He was eager to say he wanted to conceive through IVF. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought William just wanted a child. It wasn't until now that I understood. What he truly wanted was a child with Emily. I went through 6 months of morning sickness and insomnia. My body was swollen. My mental state was almost collapsing, only to find out that I was actually carrying William and my stepsister's child. All the pain and torment were borne by me. Now they even want to put me to death. "Mr. Johnson, this is the medication for this month. Continue taking it. The child will absorb nutrition faster and become healthier and stronger. By then, if the child is too large for a natural birth, we will have to opt for a cesarean section, just behind a door." I listened in despair as my husband discussed how to harm me with someone else. My face was pale, completely devoid of color. My hands left deep fingerprints on the handrail in the hospital corridor. I felt upset and suffocated inside. All kinds of emotions were mixed together. I really wanted to rush in and confront him for clarity, but my feet felt as if they were fixed in cement. I couldn't move at all. Suddenly, my body swayed. I bumped into the door frame. It made a sound. "Who's there?" I quickly took a deep breath. I tried to stay calm, not letting anyone see my nervousness. "It's me. William, are you feeling any better?" "I'm not feeling well. I want to go home." As soon as William heard this, he hurriedly ran out. He looked at me with a worried expression. His eyes were filled with genuine concern. There was not a hint of deception. "Where do you feel uncomfortable? Have you been standing for too long? Just sit down and wait for me. Don't walk around. Be careful not to hurt the baby." William kept reminding me. If I hadn't overheard his conversation with the doctor, I might have been very touched. But now I understand. He only cares about the baby, not about me. "Don't worry, Isabella," I asked the doctor. "There's nothing serious. The baby is growing well." I didn't say anything, but I felt like my heart was being sliced. William helped me back home. Less than a minute after I sat down, he quickly took out the medicine he brought from the hospital. He handed it to me and said, "This is the medication for preserving the pregnancy for today. You should take it quickly." William had a noticeable smile on his face. I remembered what I heard today. A wave of discomfort hit my stomach. "I don't want to take this medicine anymore. The doctor said the baby is very healthy. There shouldn't be any need to eat in the future." His expression suddenly changed. She frowned tightly. Her gaze was fixed directly on me. His tone became a bit cold. "Isabella, you have to listen. I asked the doctor today, even if the fetus is fine, you must take this medicine on time." That's all I said. He immediately shoved the medicine into my mouth, not giving me any chance to resist. The pills slid down my throat one after another. I couldn't help but feel like vomiting. William reacted quickly. He suddenly pinched my nose. I reluctantly opened my mouth. He took the opportunity to pour a glass of water for me, forcing me to swallow all the pills. After doing all this, William returned to his gentle expression, gently wiping the water from the corner of my mouth. "Listen to me. Just hold on a little longer. We'll be able to relax soon." His eyes were gentle. The movements are slow, but it gives me a chill. This time, I went to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. In fact, I was the one who suggested it. My belly is much larger than that of an average 6-month pregnancy. It's about the same size as someone carrying twins. I checked online. I know that having a large fetus could impact childbirth. To ensure the health of the baby and my own safety, I proposed to William that we go to the hospital for another checkup. But I didn't expect that. This marriage and his 6 years of pursuit have been a complete deception from start to finish. It turns out, I was just a substitute for him and his stepsister Emily to have a child. I was dozing off in bed. I vaguely heard William on the phone. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but when I woke up, I found that there were several more nannies in the house. Isabella, you're awake. Why are there suddenly so many people in the house? William's eyes showed a hint of nervousness. Hurry over and hug me. He gently patted my head. You forgot again. I have to go on a business trip in the next few days. I won't be able to be by your side, so I hired a nanny for you. Let her take good care of you. That's when I remembered. Today is already the end of the month. Every time it gets to this point, William always disappears for a few days. The next day, he left. I had just gotten up. The nanny handed me the pills. Madam, Mr. Johnson specifically instructed us, you must take this medication for pregnancy on time. 3 times a day. You can't miss a single dose. A chill ran through my heart. They said the nanny was hired to take care of me, but actually, it's to monitor me. Right. A bitter feeling surged in my heart. At that moment, the phone rang. It was William calling. His timing was really precise. He knew I had already gotten up. He also knew it was time for me to take my medicine. Isabella, did you take your medicine on time today? My throat suddenly feels tight. I fell silent for a moment. I tried to suppress the grievances and sadness inside. I haven't taken it yet. William, can I skip this medicine? I didn't expect the man who was just so friendly suddenly changed his face. He yelled at me. This medicine is good for you. Be obedient. I don't want to lose my temper. My last bit of unrealistic hope has completely vanished. Under the supervision of the nanny, I obediently took the medicine. After that, every day, William would call or video chat on time to supervise me taking my medicine on time. The nannies saw this scene. All thought I was very happy. Madam, Mr. Johnson is really considerate of you. He remembers to remind you to take your medicine every day. He even calls to confirm. Your marriage is truly enviable. I remained silent. I could only force a smile. What am I jealous of? It's that husband who treats me so well. Or is it that he only wants my life? I avoid the nanny. I lie in bed. I have booked an abortion at a hospital, since William doesn't see me as a wife at all. I have no need to foolishly wait and suffer. This relationship has already gone wrong. There's no need to continue. I just finished booking the abortion. My phone vibrated once. Emily sent a message. Dear sister, how long has it been since you came home? Today seems to be your birthday. Mom wants you to come home for dinner. Looking at the message on my phone, she suddenly gripped the phone tightly with both hands. My breath caught. Emily is my stepsister. Mom is my biological mother. But when I was very young, Mom kicked me out of the house on my 18th birthday. Emily jumped into the water herself, but she insists that I pushed her in. Mom blamed me for that. To have a stable life in this blended family, she sent me back to my hometown without hesitation. Seeing that I didn't argue, Emily sent me another photo. In the photo, there was a man driving, only his arm was visible. He was wearing a wedding ring I'm familiar with, she said. Big sister, William is also there. He wants you to come over. Although I already understand that William doesn't love me, he might even be harmful to me. But when I found out he used a business trip as an excuse, in reality, he was meeting with Emily. I still felt immense pain inside, although I was reluctant to go. I know my stepsister Emily well. She would definitely find a way to make me show up tonight. Sure enough, it wasn't long before my mom's call came in. Isabella, you've been pregnant for 6 months. I never had the chance to see you. Today is your birthday. Come spend some time with Mom. Mom went through a lot to give birth to you. She also experienced many hardships. I interrupted her with a cold face. No need to say more. I will go. In the evening, I arrived at the community where they live. William opened the door for me. As soon as he saw me, his face immediately showed a look of panic. He rarely gets this flustered. He couldn't even speak clearly. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be resting at home? I silently looked at him. I didn't say anything. The person who was supposed to be on a business trip suddenly appeared in front of me. William snapped back to reality. He stared at me coldly. His tone was filled with anger. Isabella, who let you come here, are you following me? At that moment, I was filled with bitterness. I was just about to explain. William suddenly grabbed my arm. He didn't consider that I was pregnant. Let's talk about it when we get home. Please leave immediately. William, what are you doing? My sister is the one I invited. We haven't seen each other in a long time. Mom misses her too. Emily's voice came from behind him. William's furrowed brows immediately relaxed. He slowly let go of my arm. So that's how it is. Isabella, why didn't you tell me earlier? If I had known, I just got back from a business trip. I should have gone home to pick you up first. and come here together." I smiled quietly to myself. This explanation is really quite perfunctory. We sat at the dining table. Emily quickly took the seat next to William. I hesitated for a moment. This time, I didn't speak up like before. Instead, I chose to sit across from him. I remember one time at a gathering, Emily did the same thing. At that time, I made quite a fuss about it. William immediately grabbed the wine glass from the table. He slammed it down in front of me. He scolded me loudly for being rude. Seeing me quietly sitting across from him, his eyes showed a hint of panic. I hardly touched my chopsticks throughout the meal. Mom served Emily some food. William was also busy serving her food. I took 2 bites and then put down my chopsticks. I made an excuse to leave. Emily pretended to be reluctant and said she would see me off. But at the door, she lowered her voice and whispered some provocative words in my ear. "Isabella, why are you still so useless after all these years? You can't even keep a man. What does it matter if you're pregnant now? Let me tell you, as long as I say a word, this child will have to recognize me as their mother after they are born. You can only watch helplessly as the child leaves you. In the end, it will have nothing to do with you." After Emily finished speaking, she suddenly let out a scream. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. She said with grievance, "Sister, I just wanted to see you off. Why are you pinching me so hard?" At that moment, a large red mark appeared on her arm. William hurried over upon hearing the noise. His eyes turned red instantly. He grabbed my hair tightly and dragged me in front of Emily. He said angrily, "Isabella, so many years have passed. You are still so uncultured. What did Emily do to offend you? Why do you have to be so harsh on her? He knows exactly how to make me suffer the most. He speaks without any mercy. My dad was gone when I was a child. My mom later kicked me out of the house. She stopped taking care of me. I became a child with no one to care for me. What kind of upbringing could I possibly have?" My mom sighed faintly. She said nothing more in the end. Emily wiped her tears. She said, feeling wronged, "Sister, I know you've never liked me since we were young, but I don't mind. Because you are my sister, even if you hit me. I wouldn't blame you." In the next moment, William's heart softened. He immediately let go of my hair and instead held Emily tightly. He softly comforted her. I silently turned around and left feeling dejected. I walked home all the way. I even forgot to call a taxi. By the time I got home, it was already very late. It was drizzling outside. My long hair got soaked. William had already come back, though I didn't notice when. He was standing under the window, holding a lit cigarette. As soon as he saw me, he immediately extinguished the cigarette and quickly ran towards me. "Isabella, where have you been? I called you so many times, but you didn't answer." I was really worried. I remained silent, no response. He suddenly hugged me tightly. His voice was a bit shaky. "I was really scared just now. I haven't heard anything from you. I was almost going crazy." He reached out and touched my wet hair. He looked a bit worried. He quickly pulled me down to sit on the sofa. He immediately brought a towel, gently helped me wipe the rain off my hair. "Isabella, I was too impulsive just now. I did some irrational things, but you have to believe me. I really didn't mean to. Emily is your sister. You were too harsh on her. There's a red mark on her arm, and it even bled. So you think I caused the injury on her arm?" As soon as I finished speaking, William's voice was clearly filled with anger, shouted loudly, "Who else could it be if not you? Could it be that Emily did it herself?" I turned my head to look at him, with a hint of a cold smile on his face. "Why is it impossible?" William suppressed his anger. The towel in his hand wiped across my face. He threw me heavily to the ground. "You really are hard to understand." Later, William left. I sat on the sofa for a long time. Eventually, I unknowingly fell asleep. William groggily carried me to bed. He was like usual, his hand naturally wrapped around my waist, gently humming a lullaby. I seemed to be talking in my sleep. "William, do you know, today is actually my birthday." He suddenly stiffened as he grabbed my hand. It felt like he froze completely. "All these years, you have never given me a birthday gift." William leaned close to my ear, whispered softly, "I understand. I'll make up for your birthday gift tomorrow. A long time has passed." I opened my eyes wide in the dark. I woke up. Early the next morning, William left home. I hurriedly followed him out. We took a taxi straight to the hospital for the scheduled abortion. Before the surgery, I called my best friend. I asked her to come and keep me company, and I also asked her to help me change rooms right after the surgery. The doctor looked at my ultrasound report. Frowning, he said, "The baby in your belly is too big. Medication is no longer effective. You can only have a surgical abortion. However, a surgical abortion will still have some effects on your body. Isabella, are you sure you want to terminate the pregnancy? After hearing this, I suddenly felt like a heavy stone was pressing on my chest. It became difficult to breathe. Breathing has become difficult. I carried this child for 6 hard months, only to find out in the end that it has nothing to do with me. Don't say it affected me. If this continues, he even wants my life. Better to let it flow away. I'm beaten to the point of weakness. I was pushed into the operating room. At that moment, the phone kept vibrating. It's a call from William. He might have noticed that I suddenly disappeared. I can feel the blood slowly draining from my body. The once protruding belly is gradually flattening. Even though this child is not biologically related to me, my heart still feels empty. After the surgery, my best friend pushed me out of the hospital. Before leaving, I saw that William had already found out about me. He rushed to the hospital. He sent me a text message. Isabella, are you in the hospital? Why didn't you go to our own hospital for a checkup? Why come to such a small place? I scoffed. Without hesitation, I pointed him to a place. You should go check the operating room. There might be a surprise waiting for you. I just replied to his text. Then William's call came in. I didn't answer. It's fine to answer the phone after he sees the surprise. It's not too late to pick up the call. I'm lying in my friend's car. She took me to her house. I originally planned to go to a rehabilitation hospital for postpartum care, but my friend insisted that William has too much power. The rehabilitation hospital might not be able to stop him. I thought about it. I felt she had a point, so I agreed to stay at her house. While I was lying in bed, William saw the surprise I prepared for him. The operating table was covered in blood, and there were pieces of flesh. It felt like a heavy hammer struck his chest, causing him a dull pain. William's legs went weak. As he stepped back, he accidentally stepped on the flesh on the ground. He jumped up as if electrocuted. His eyes were filled with fear. He hurriedly picked up his phone to call me, but my hands were shaking badly. I almost dropped my phone. Isabella, don't scare me. Where are you exactly? What checkup did you go to the hospital for today? I remember we didn't need to have any checkups recently. I smiled weakly. He remembers it very clearly. He knows we don't need to do any checkups recently. I forgot to tell you, I didn't do those checkups. I only had an abortion. I gave birth to the child early. This news reached William's ears. It was like a thunderclap. It left his mind buzzing. He was stunned for a moment. It was like something you clearly heard, but couldn't dare to believe. You would unconsciously ask again. What, Isabella? What did you just say? I said the meat on the ground is your son. Didn't you always want a son? I gave birth to him early for you. Then, right after that, a loud bang came from the phone. William's hand slipped. The phone fell to the ground. Unfortunately, the phone landed right in the pile of minced meat he had just stepped on. He quickly knelt down, apologizing repeatedly. He carefully picked up the phone, even though it was covered in blood. He held it as if it were a treasure. Then, he let out an incredulous scream. Why did you do this? This is your child too. Isabella, how could you be so heartless to let him go? When this matter was brought up again, my voice couldn't help but tremble. I gritted my teeth and asked him word by word, Are you sure? Are you sure this is my child, William? I'm not stupid. You said you bought the whole hospital for me, but it was actually to carry out your plan, to use my body. Let your child with Emily be born. So what even if the child is not biologically related to you? But this child is one you carried for 6 months. You spent 200 days and nights accompanying him. How can you be so heartless? Don't you have any compassion at all? William was shouting hoarsely on the other end of the phone, even though he wasn't by his side. You could tell he was about to break down. I was almost screaming. My voice was hoarse. I was ruthless. If I had been soft-hearted, would you, William, have let me live until now? Haven't you already arranged the script for me 3 months later? I said with a sarcastic tone. 3 months later, the doctor told me the fetus was too large. A cesarean section was needed. During the surgery, there were signs of severe bleeding. The doctor asked whether to save the mother or the child. You chose to save the child without hesitation. And what about me? I would likely leave this world on a hospital bed. You won't even spare me a glance. After all, this is your child with Emily. I'm just someone helping out. After William heard this, he was momentarily speechless. He remained silent for a while. Then he finally spoke up. Isabella, you already know all this. William, I've really misjudged you over the years. I will have my lawyer contact you about the divorce. You keep holding on to the fact that I pushed Emily into the water, but I want to tell you that wasn't me. Whether you believe it or not, That was all planned by Emily herself. After hanging up the phone, I immediately blocked William's number. From today on, there will be no more contact between us. After Isabella decisively hung up the phone, William suddenly sat down on the ground. The surroundings were drenched in blood red. Broken objects were scattered on the ground. He covered his face with his hands and began to cry softly. After a long while, the nurse's voice came over. "Sir, we need to clean up. Could you please step outside for a moment?" Two nurses were tidying up the surgical pads on the bed. They were chatting as they worked. One of them said, "What a pity, such a large fetus has just been lost. Look, the blue surgical pad is stained red with blood. Sigh, this can't be blamed on the pregnant woman. The fetus was already this big at just 6 months. At this rate, on the day of delivery, the pregnant woman might be in life-threatening danger." William's lips were tightly pressed together. His face was pale. He looked completely drained of color. He didn't even know what he was thinking. He even took the initiative to clean up the blood and flesh and carry it away. Now his mind was in a state of chaos. He felt utterly dazed. He stumbled out of the hospital. For a moment, he didn't know where to go. In the past, he felt that having Isabella at home, he had to stay with her all the time, to take care of her during the pregnancy. Now the child is gone. She is gone too. He feels like a kite with a broken string, without any ties. William got into the car. He doesn't know why. The nurse's words about the pregnant woman's life keep lingering in his mind. In the past, when he said those words, he always had an indescribable resentment towards Isabella. Now, he suddenly feels scared, even a bit regretful. William shook his head vigorously, trying to drive away these unrealistic thoughts. Then, he drove to find Emily. As soon as he saw Emily, he couldn't help but directly ask her, "At that birthday party years ago, was it Isabella who pushed you into the water?" He doesn't even know why he asked that. Emily's eyes were a bit evasive. She quickly changed the subject. "It's been so long already. I can't remember that clearly anymore. William, since you're here, why not sit down and have a meal before you leave?" William remained silent. Although he already had the answer in his heart, he felt a deep fear. He didn't say a word. He turned and left. Then he went to find my mom. He straightforwardly stated his purpose. At first, my mom didn't want to reveal anything, but upon seeing that jar of blood and flesh preserved in formalin, and William's terrifying face, my pupils constricted sharply. My voice trembled. What is this? "It's Isabella's miscarried child," William murmured. He looked dazed. My mom almost couldn't stand up. After a long while, she finally began to speak in fragments. "If you don't ask, I will never mention this again in my life. It's because of this matter. Isabella's relationship with me has also become distant." She gave a bitter smile. The whole farce was actually meticulously planned by Emily. She originally wanted to drag Isabella down with her, but Isabella noticed her intention ahead of time. She avoided it in time. In the end, Emily lost her balance and slipped down suddenly. She also hit a rock at the bottom of the water. As a result, she got sick. As my mom spoke, her eyes turned red, and tears flowed uncontrollably. I was too selfish back then. I only thought about living safely and soundly in this home, so I sent Isabella away. All these years, I never took care of her, and I didn't dare to face her. I always favored Emily. I supported her in everything. All of this is my fault. I owe Isabella an apology. I thought she would live well after marrying you. William, how have you taken care of Isabella? This is why you married her. Is this how you treat your wife?" My mom pointed at the jar filled with flesh and blood. Her tone still revealed dissatisfaction with William. William stood there in a daze for a long time. His breathing became rapid. He gradually felt out of breath. He widened his eyes unknowingly filled with bloodshot veins. Teardrops streamed down his face. He shouted uncontrollably. It felt as if the world had turned upside down. "On what basis do you say that about me? All of this is your fault. If it weren't for you deceiving me, how would I treat Isabella like this? It's all your fault. It's all because of you." My mom suddenly slumped down on the sofa. William hurriedly ran out. He didn't dare to think deeply. That Isabella he had pursued for 6 years. Outwardly strong but inwardly weak, having gone through so much suffering. How much courage does it take to keep going? Unhappiness in youth. As an adult, he hurt her deeply once again. This blow nearly changed her entire life. "William, you are truly disappointing." Suddenly, a loud slap echoed. He slapped himself hard across the face. Before long, a noticeable red mark appeared on his face. William went to find Emily again. When he saw her again, A surge of hatred suddenly welled up in his heart. If it weren't for her, how could his Isabella have suffered so much? William's eyes blazed with anger. He coldly asked her, "Do you remember now? Was it Isabella who pushed you into the water?" Emily was frightened by his appearance. Panic-stricken, she instinctively shook her head. Her voice trembled. No, it wasn't her. But even if it wasn't her, so what now? I can no longer bear children. William, you clearly said we would definitely have children. Wait until Isabella gives birth. We'll immediately take the baby and raise it ourselves. From then on, the child will call me Mom and call you Dad. This will be our child. She hasn't finished speaking. William suddenly burst into wild laughter. Until this moment, he realized how outrageous his actions had been and how much harm he caused Isabella. William forced Isabella to take medication. He wouldn't stop even if she vomited. He also forced her to undergo IVF, with needles several centimeters long piercing deeply into her body. Just thinking about this, William became extremely agitated. He nearly lost his sanity. He frowned and glared fiercely at Emily. "Fine, I'll go get the baby for you right now." After saying that, he quickly took out a jar containing blood and flesh soaked in formalin from the car and stuffed it into Emily's arms. He revealed his white teeth. He said word by word, "From today on, you must take good care of this child. If anything happens to my child, I won't let you go." The limbs of the fetus could be faintly seen in the jar. Emily screamed in fright. She loosened her grip. The jar fell to the ground and shattered. "William, are you crazy? This is a corpse. How can I raise it?" "Right. I've gone mad. Driven mad by you." He suddenly grabbed Emily's chin tightly. The force was so strong it almost dislocated her jaw. He said coldly, "From now on, you will stay obediently in this room. Take good care of the child for me. Soon." William called for the bodyguards. They surrounded the entire villa. "You can't do this. I love you. William, you can't treat me like this." Emily pleaded repeatedly, but the bodyguards still pulled her back to the villa. William returned home. He found the house empty. It was eerily quiet. This made him feel very uncomfortable. When Isabella was around, she always loved to stir things up. Sometimes she would ask him to help massage her sore legs. Other times, she would act cute and say she wanted to eat his cooking. Thinking of these things, William couldn't help but smile. He realized he really missed her. He had pursued her for 6 years. After marriage, 3 more years had passed, a total of 9 years. He had grown accustomed to having Isabella by his side. In the past, he was confused by Emily. He always mistakenly thought he liked Emily, until today. He finally realized his feelings for Isabella. It turned out he had unknowingly fallen in love with her. Just then, his phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number. William is worried it's Isabella on the phone. He quickly answered it. The other party said, "Hello, Mr. Johnson. I am Isabella's lawyer. She has entrusted me to handle all matters regarding your divorce." Unknowingly, I have been staying at my best friend's house for half a month. Having her take care of me is much easier than living alone. The sun is shining brightly today. I am lying by the window soaking up the sun. The lawyer called me. His tone still carried an apology. "Isabella." Mr. Johnson was very firm, no matter how we persuaded him. He refused to sign the divorce agreement. He insists that you speak with him in person. I immediately rejected the proposal to meet with him. Then let's just delay it for now. If it really comes to that, we will file for divorce directly. After hanging up the phone, it wasn't long before my mom's call came in. I tightly held my phone, staring blankly at her number. She's been calling me a lot lately, and she often chats with me for a long time, whether intentionally or not. Sometimes I don't want to answer the phone, but she keeps calling. In the end, she even uses my dad's last words to make me pick up. She answered the phone. Her voice was filled with joy. "Isabella, how have you been feeling lately? What do you want to eat? I'll bring it to you. How does the braised pork you loved as a child taste now? And there's mapo tofu too." I quietly listened. I more or less understood what she was up to. Maybe William is right by her side at this moment. Ever since I blocked William's number, he always finds ways to contact me. But I've enabled the unknown number blocking feature. Now the only person who can reach me is my mom's phone. You said that was something from childhood. I don't like those things anymore now. Isabella, so what do you like to eat now? You tell Mom. Mom just she hadn't finished speaking. I directly interrupted her. No need. I can make what I want to eat myself. I've grown up. I'm not the same as I was when I was little. In the future, don't call me unless it's necessary. Just like before, don't worry about me. That's pretty good. There was silence on the other end for a while. In the end, I was the one who spoke first. I know William must be by your side. You don't need to go through the trouble of looking for me. With that time, it's better to persuade him to sign the divorce agreement quickly. No sooner had the words left my mouth. A painful scream came from the other side. I don't want a divorce. Isabella, I know I was wrong. I was deceived. Just forgive me this once. He hadn't finished speaking. I hung up the phone. I really didn't expect that. He is so persistent. I don't know how he found out about my whereabouts. The next day, he appeared at my best friend's door. At first, I thought he was a delivery guy, but then William barged right in. Luckily, I stayed in the room and didn't come out. I could only hear him arguing with my best friend. His last name is Johnson. How dare you come to my house? Please leave immediately. William looked around. He didn't find me. He could only pursed his lips and said, I know Isabella is hiding inside. Call her out. I'm here to take her home. Isabella isn't here. You have the wrong place. His last name is Johnson. He suddenly lost control and shouted, Don't lie to me. Isabella, I know you're here. I'm begging you. Come back with me, please. I will explain everything to you. I will clarify everything. William kept shouting outside. I stayed silent inside the house. My best friend was pushing him hard. Don't let him into the house. He can't handle being soft, so he went straight to being tough. Isabella, if you don't come out today, I'll make your friend's company go bankrupt immediately. You know I can do it, finally. His words left me no more escape. I know him too well to force me to show up. He can do anything. She opened the door and looked at him coldly. William, what do you really want? Do you have to drive me to a dead end before you're satisfied? As soon as the words left my mouth, the man immediately ran in front of me. He knelt down and pleaded softly, Great. Isabella, you finally agreed to see me. You know, that's not what I meant. I'm really out of options. I tried everything to see you, but you weren't willing. I had no choice but to do this. William finished speaking. He pulled me and wanted to go outside. My best friend immediately stood in front of me. She protected me like a hen guards her chicks. She said to William, William, if you have the ability, make me bankrupt. Today, I will never let you take Isabella away. I couldn't help but laugh. William stood there in a daze. He stared straight at me. His eyes were filled with deep affection. In the end, I pulled my friend aside. I turned to William and said, Let's go. It's just downstairs. Let's talk. He seemed to guess what I was going to say. His expression suddenly darkened. He pressed his lips tightly together. Not a word was spoken. We walked to the garden downstairs in the community. I sat on the grass, enjoying the sunshine. William silently stood behind me. He seemed a bit anxious. He didn't say a word. Let's calculate. We haven't seen each other for nearly 20 days. He has lost quite a bit of weight. He hasn't shaved the stubble on his chin. He looks a bit scruffy. The dark circles under his eyes are also very noticeable. Obviously, during the time I wasn't here, William hasn't really rested at all. I told him, William, you know what? During those 6 years you pursued me, there were many times I almost said yes. But I was scared. Scared that I would become like my mom. Scared that if I had children in the future, they would follow in my footsteps. You spent a full 6 years. And finally moved me. I thought this time I wouldn't lose again. But reality tells me I still lost so completely. After saying that, he knelt down with a face full of regret. She sobbed and said intermittently, You didn't lose. It's all my fault. I was deceived by Emily and the others. I was momentarily confused. I couldn't see myself clearly. Isabella, please forgive me this time. From now on, I'll listen to you on everything. I smiled. I casually pulled a blade of grass from the ground. Look, this grass has been pulled out by the roots. Do you think it can recover, William? A loss is a loss. I accept it. I don't love you. I can do it too. Please don't come looking for me again. Okay? I don't want to lose even the last bit of my dignity. After that day, I never saw William again. However, my best friend always looks at me strangely. The company suddenly received a lot more orders recently. I don't even know where they came from in the end. I was overwhelmed with work, so she called me to the company for help. Because of being too busy with work, I almost forgot to pick up the divorce certificate. That day, William called me several times. That's when I remembered. The proud person from before has now become particularly humble. When we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau with the slightly pale divorce certificate, he gently called out to me, I'm sorry. Isabella, I stood there in shock for a while, looking back. This seems to be the first time he said sorry to me, but all of that has become the past. In the days to come, I will become stronger on my own.